It's an unprecedented event here in Israel that is really terrible damage and losses for many, almost all over the country. Started surprisingly Saturday morning, holiday in Israel, 6:30 a.m. Sirens in different parts of the country. Took some time to understand what's actually going on because it's a very different modality than what we're used to having in cycles with Gaza. These are usually happen gradually. And understanding the scope that it's not only missiles, it's also infiltration into cities, villages, kibbutzim, Hamas terrorists running in the streets of villages, taking hostages, something we didn't know in the past. And the full picture is not yet known. So as time goes by, numbers, names, stories are all coming out gradually. So currently people are baffled. They said, how could that happen? You know, such a barrier has been put in place with Gaza, the most significant border that we have with the largest potential of escalation. And how can those people of Gaza so easily, the Hamas terrorists so easily enter territory and do what they did? Once there will be answer to this question, I think it will be clear how it could be addressed. The current situation in which nobody understands how it happens, and there's the sense of failure without an explanation. For example, we already know that some of the first attacks by Hamas was against the military posts that kind of dismantled the ability of those managing and monitoring the border to convey the messages and the information to the forces on the ground. So once there are answers, I think Israelis will be more clear about who is responsible and what should be done to fix it. Very much surprised, very much angered and frustrated. I think all of that will be more prominent once the security situation is back to relative normal. You know, at the moment there's still fighting going on within Israeli territory. There are a lot of people held in Gaza, women, children, others. People are just learning about their losses. So people are now trying to minimize damage, to handle the situation, to help those in need, to get the upper hand militarily. But once that is clear, I think there will be a lot of soul searching about how this situation came about. Definitely not something that we expected at Israel, not what we expected our government and security establishment to be handling and dealing. So that anger will be channeled later on and will be entering the political debate as well. It's evident that the first goal of Israel is to push Hamas out of its territory. And wherever there are still Hamas people inside Israeli towns, the effort is to clean that. Then I think there's a lot of acknowledgement of the issue of time when dealing with hostages and captives. The quicker you can manage to release at least some of those, the better. So there may be some diplomatic efforts on that. I think the current attitude is that Israel suffered losses and it doesn't want to suffer additional ones because of misconduct of decision making. So I think that would be a crucial thing. There are debates now about maybe bringing a centrist party into the government just for the sake of handling this military operation, which will bring some more capable individuals into the cabinet. I think that's something that will help at least the planning and decision making. At the moment we see a lot of support for Israel coming from all walks of life, including from Arab and Muslim states. People understand that what Hamas did is not the way they want to see the Palestinian struggle being conducted. And that comes from the US, it comes from Europe, it comes from some countries in the Arab world. But there is growing interest in the international community to try and advance ideas about peace. Just last month, a Peace Day effort was launched by the EU, the Arab League, Egypt, and Jordan at the UN, on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, including with the Saudis, of trying to put incentives for peace. There may be a Palestinian component in normalization with the Saudis. So that kind of discourse should be very much on the table. Anything that happens in the region should take into account how that could be leveraged to advance Israeli-Palestinian peace. And the threat from Iran is a big one for Israel for years, and it's not only the nuclear issue, it's about the regional role that Hamas is playing and the support, so that Iran is playing and the support it gives to its proxies in the region, and definitely there is already discussion about Iran involvement in the Hamas operation and the support, the guidance it gave, the approvals it gave. And nevertheless, confrontation with Iran is different than confrontation with Hamas. I think Israel will try to take a toll first on Hamas and its leadership, the military wing, and continue to act against Iran the way it did over the last few years. So the battle against Iran is not new. It's handled in a way that doesn't lead to full-fledged conflict, which nobody, I think, really wants. but definitely when strategic interests of Israel are at risk, then Israel will need to find a way to respond, hopefully a smart and effective one. Israel are uniting now, and it's surprising in a way, because what we had over the last year was a lot of polarization and division within the society and incitement, and it's not an easy atmosphere within Israel. But many of those groups that were acting towards democracy over the last month are now mobilizing support to support families and soldiers, and you have new mechanisms of organizations that really deliver. And some of those military generals that were attacked by the right wing as traitors over the last month are now the ones that are doing heroic personal steps, just going into the area of war and bringing people out, saving lives. So I think this calculation of the good and bad within our society is changing, and it shows, the unifying factors within our community. I hope it will lead the government to change course, to understand that what it was trying to do to Israel democracy is wrong, is flawed, that there will be some sort of change within the composition of the coalition. But we also need a change in our leadership, because we currently have a prime minister whose interests are somewhere else in his corruption trial. And that's not a leadership that could manage effectively the struggles or the issues that we have in Israel. So there is a need for political renewal. I think the anger towards how the government handles the situation will eventually trigger that, but it will be a long process. It won't happen overnight. And first, now everybody is dealing with the security situation and at least passing by the first difficult days.